let us all do we can to build a better future.
Okay. I wasn't really expecting this, nor was I expecting Jesse Ventura to actually be involved in this political election cycle of 2024. Now, as we all know, Jesse Ventura made history as being one of the first major independent candidates to win a high-profile seat, and as being the governor of Minnesota. It was something unheard of, where an independent candidate beat the Republican and the Democrat. For that, I congratulate him, and also for his outstanding work with the Green Party, and also talking about the two-party system. Now, this election cycle, I have made it very clear on how I view both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. Now, all of you can vote however which way you want, but I encourage people to vote independent and third party. But it would be wrong of me to say on this show that I'm not disappointed in the current crop of independents and third-party candidates and their overall lackluster attempts to really make an impact. In my personal opinion, third parties such as the Greens, Libertarians have more of an excuse as they have more ballot access, but nonetheless, independents as a whole should have been building up their movements after the 2016 election cycle and going onward. This election cycle was RFK Jr. and his controversies, especially in regards to the crisis in Gaza. Dr. Cornel West and his campaign, which seems to be stuck in the mud. And then there's the Greens and all the other remaining independents. To say I'm disappointed is an understatement. But nonetheless, we shall see what happens. Voter turnout will be key, and the message, whichever candidate is successful in doing so, will be the one to do it. Now, RFK Jr. does have name recognition, and with all the headlines surrounding him, many of Americans are looking at him. As it stands right now, Jesse Ventura has endorsed RFK Jr. for president. And there's been more talk about the threat of third parties. So I'll give my thoughts on this first. We got Jesse Ventura endorsing RFK Jr. So let's pull this up here and talk about it.
I support this because I have been a person of the third party my entire political career and my entire adult lifetime. I go way back. I voted for John Anderson back in 1980, for those of you that are old enough to remember that. So I have been a third party person my entire life. I support the third party movement. Ralph Nader had it best when he called it the two-party dictatorship, because that's what it is. And you're seeing right now, the very reason we need to elect somebody other than Democrats or Republicans. And that reason is this. You're seeing it right now with this border bill where they put their party before the country. Bear that in mind. Democrats and Republicans always put their party first, then it's their money bag donors that give them the money. And let's see, we the people, we could end up about fourth or fifth on the list. But rest assured, it's their party first, not the country. And you're seeing that right now. They could pass this bill, but they're not doing it. Why? Because of party politics and an election coming this fall. So let everybody suffer while they put their parties first.
Now, as much as I agree with these statements, when I hear RFK Jr. talk about the crisis in Gaza, as well as other situations, I do have to wonder just how much in the road will RFK Jr. or potential RFK Jr. presidency would be in. Who would he side with the most? Because at the end of the day, if you're going to be an independent candidate, you will be on your own. You will be dealing with the remnants of the two-party system. And the two-party system has made it clear that they will do everything they can to dismiss a president. And when you are a third-party candidate, you're going to have to deal with the two-party system, of course. But RFK Jr. has made some statements that are in line with the neoconservatives and neoliberals of both parties. Case in point, the absolute loyalty and pledge to AIPAC in Israel.
Well, that's why we need to elect independents. I won the election in Minnesota. I took on the Democrats and Republicans. And I was talking with Bobby earlier, and I think I amazed him a little bit. when I told him I only raised $300,000 to become the governor of Minnesota. I can tell you this. I made more money doing the job than what I spent to get it. There isn't an elected official in the last 100 years to a major office who can say that. I made more money doing the job than I did spent to get it.
Okay. Making more money. Okay, fine. It's in this current environment, I wouldn't be bragging it out loud too much.
And that's what you're looking at today. You talk about wasteful spending. How about the wasteful spending on these political parties and the money that just goes down for lack of a better term, down the toilet with this fundraising and all that stuff? I don't need that. And Bobby doesn't need it either. Bobby will make it on ideas. That's what I ran on in Minnesota, ideas. And the people responded. The voter turnout rose and went sky high in Minnesota. Bobby can do the same thing nationally. He can, if all we need is for people to believe, and I'm your example. I beat the Democrats and Republicans at the same time. They can be beaten. They can be beaten. And how you beat them is with ideas. How you beat them is with people responding to those ideas. And how you beat them is by putting America first. The United States first, not yourself.
Well, I want him to talk. I don't want to be interrupting him all the time. We only got a few more seconds of this interview. However, America first. Well, billions of dollars are going to Ukraine. Billions of dollars are going to Israel. Billions of dollars are being wasted into this war in Yemen. And hey, we're doing tactical strikes in Iran, or either at proxy bases in other countries like Syria and Iraq. Say with me, folks. It seems like we're in the category of what could possibly go wrong.
This isn't about yourself, and this isn't about your political party. It's about our country. And right now, our country needs Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Okay. So, Jesse Ventura, all in for RFK Jr. I wonder if he ever had a chance to speak to Dennis Kucinich about when he had to leave his campaign, because old Bobby, damn it, Bobby, was all in for Israel. And as we all know, there is still a crisis happening there. There is a lack of aid going into Gaza. Even though supposedly there's rumors of a ceasefire, people are still dying. Just wait till we get past 50,000. Then maybe we could do something, right? I want to pull up this video here as well, because no matter what, the American people are not fully well aware of the overall corruption of our system. And when we see another option like a third-party candidate, many of Americans will be attracted to it. That's why the purpose of this show is not only for you guys to get educated and arm yourselves with information, but for you to explore and look at different perspectives and points of view. And I think it's important that we talk to people about the overall corruption and abuse of power so that we remain vigilant in informing individuals about overall the problems with the political system and inspiring people to look at other candidates. However, again, people shouldn't be starstruck at the name of RFK Jr. or Dr. Cornel West. It's important to look at the policy issues and what they're defending and where they stand on certain issues. Because if not, then we're still dealing with the same overall problem. So let's go ahead and pull up this video here from Case Study QB, who's wrongly being censored. Let's play this video for all you wonderful, beautiful people. Because, well, third parties are apparently a threat, though. Even though there's a whole system at the state and federal level stopping third parties from being on the ballot and being on the debate stage.
Senior political columnist for Politico, Jonathan Martin. His latest piece is entitled, "Forget No Labels, Biden's Third-Party Peril is on the Left." And Jonathan, you write in part this: "It's the left that presents the most acute peril to the president. Few in the administration sense the danger more than Vice President Kamala Harris. From holiday parties to a dinner at her residence last month for a group of prominent Black men, Harris has been telling sympathetic Democrats outside the White House that she recognizes the political challenge posed by Biden's unwavering public support for Israel. I'm told by officials familiar with her comments at the events.
Nope.
Part of the president's challenge, particularly with younger Democrats deriving their news almost entirely from social media, is they don't hear of Biden pushing Netanyahu behind the scenes.
Well, yeah, of course. This is something millennials brought up. Everyone's talking about. It's not only boomers and Gen Xers and millennials, Gen Z, we're all talking about it and how people are looking at third parties. But yet, again, third parties have constantly been dismissed and purposely held back by Democrats and Republicans. Now, by no means is this to shine a light on the other candidates and make them seem as though they are not without fault. The fault of the third party movement in this country is the overall lack of leaders willing to take the initiative to really be the thorn in the side of Democratic and Republican Party officials. This whole talk of, well, just playing a slow game, just being practical. If you don't play the game, you're always going to lose. If you don't take the initiative, then who's going to pay attention to you? An opportunity was lost by third parties, and maybe eventually they'll get it. I will have to give credit where credit's due. The Libertarian Party, in its own defense, has actually secured more ballot access than RFK Jr., Dr. Cornel West, and the Green Party combined. Why can't the others get their act together? It's rather disappointing and depressing to know that there could be a strong third-party movement if the leaders actually took that action. And the thing is, I remember when Hardlands Media was covering the Green Party, especially after the 2016 election cycle, they used to have some huge venue areas in Illinois, and then the venue areas started getting smaller. People didn't turn out as much. It was almost as if, okay, we're the Green Party. We're going to sit here and do nothing until the next election cycle. You think I'm joking, but I'm not.
There is a hate the sin, love the sinner element to Biden's approach to Israel that some in Gen Z can't fully grasp.
So, Jonathan, very fascinating. You have most Democrats fearing what's going to happen from no labels and independent candidates. Would you say the danger comes from within Joe Biden's own party?
Well, it's something that we all said. Yes. I mean, look, Democrats, you made a lot of freaking promises that you never followed through on. Of course, people are going to abandon. It's not just young people. It's a lot of people who are abandoning the Democrats. This whole fear of Trump. We got to be afraid of Trump. Well, what else are you running on? I mean, for Christ's sakes, you're making Trump seem like the end-all, be-all of democracy. He is not. He's just some dude who's running for president of the United States. I'm not surprised he's running for re-election. I said he'd do it after 2020.
Or the far left folks that would otherwise be Democrats, Joe, but are now sort of radicalized. And Democrats have...
We're not radicalized. We're homeless. The left is homeless, you fool.
It's this stove twice in the last quarter century, right? They lost in 2000, of course, in part because of Ralph Nader on the left, and lost in 16 in part because of Jill Stein.
No. The Democrats lost because they had piss-poor candidates. The Democrats lost because they couldn't convince voters to come out to vote. All right, it's not my fault that Hillary Clinton was uninspiring and couldn't get the job done. It's not my fault that Al Gore was a bore. It's not my fault that third parties are actually a viable option that Americans want to choose from. It's just we have a two-party system that rigs the game. That's where Jesse Ventura is correct. He managed to outmaneuver both the Democrats and Republicans. And if you don't think that the two-party system won't live up heaven and earth just to make sure a third-party candidate doesn't ever succeed again, they will. But also, Democrats, why are you surprised that people are leaving? We're not radicalized. The left is homeless. There's nowhere for us to go.
On the left, and it's a more acute challenge now because you've got a conflict in the Middle East that's galvanizing and radicalizing younger voters and sort of leaving them to say, well, as you know, the old line, Joe, that you know so well, that there's not a dime's worth of difference between the two parties. If younger voters believe that in October of this year, that a vote for Biden is indifferent than a vote for Trump when it comes to the Middle East, that's not going to get them off their couch. And if it does, they're going to pull the lever for Jill Stein or Cornel West or Bobby Kennedy. And I think this is a numbers game. guys, and this is a campaign that's going to be won or lost at the margins. And if Biden loses 30,000 votes in, Ann Arbor, Michigan, or Madison, Wisconsin, that's the election right there.
Yep, that's true. And I've covered how the mayor of Dearborn, Michigan, is calling out the Wall Street Journal and the lack of action by the Democrats, especially by Biden, for not acknowledging or even stopping the massacre in Gaza. But also, let's look at the country as a whole. There are natural and man-made disasters that impacted millions of Americans during the Biden-Harris administration, especially with the aftermath of the 2020 lockdowns. This administration has not lifted up Americans. It has kept us at a bottom on the floor. It has kept us stagnant. Nothing changed for us. It just got progressively worse. That's it. Everything remained the same, but our pains were turned up to 11. You have Americans struggling to make ends meet. You have natural and man-made disasters in which our government doesn't even fully respond. Hey, ask the people of Lahaina, or ask the people of East Palestine, or ask the people of Flint, Michigan, how they're doing. But it's just not only those three places, it's all over this country. All the while our politicians are doing insider trading. I want to pull up this video here where, again, corporate media is shocked and chagrined at the fact that Americans are turning at third parties and independent events. Now, I do have my criticisms for RFK Jr., but I am not surprised why Americans would want to ditch Trump and Biden, because it's a repeat of the 2020 election cycle. Many Americans don't want to see that happen, and they do want another choice.
Kennedy! Tonight, with the Biden-Trump rematch looking likely, there is an independent trying to make this a three-way race.
If you give me a sword and some ground to stand on, I will give you back your country.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is mounting an increasingly credible bid to qualify for the 2024 ballot, more than 55 years after his father's presidential run. How confident are you that you could actually win the White House?
I think I can win the White House.
A new NBC News poll shows 34% of voters suggesting they could see themselves supporting him. But both Biden and Trump's allies fear he could play spoiler. Who do you think?
That's not true. And even if they were interviewing Dr. Cornel West or Dr. Jill Stein or whoever the libertarian candidate will be, third parties and independents are not spoilers, okay? How can they spoil something that's already a rotten carcass? How can they spoil something in which many of Americans don't even engage in anymore? Voter turnout is at an all-time low. Look at the South Carolina Democratic primary. How high was the voter turnout? Not that high. So it comes as no surprise why Biden won, because only diehard Democrat sycophants turned out to vote. Marianne, Dean, Jenke, you wasted your time. All three of you. You're like the Three Stooges. No one turns out for the primaries because the primaries were not engaging. And as for the Republican primary, it's a foregone conclusion. It's Trump. He's going to beat Nikki. That's not her name, Haley.
You will draw more voters away from Donald Trump or Joe Biden.
I mean, I hope to draw equal numbers from both of them. I think at this point, I'm probably drawing more from President Trump.
Trump himself even praising Kennedy.
He's a very good man, and his heart is in the right place, and he's doing really well.
President Biden has not even publicly acknowledged Kennedy's campaign. An environmental lawyer, Kennedy left the Democratic Party last year.
You're a Republican, and you're saying that you would be open to considering RFK Jr.
Yeah. Kennedy speaks often about America's income gap.
What's the main issue for you that brought you to it?
Oh, corporate greed, for sure.
But he has drawn scrutiny from Democrats, including for his discredited assertions vaccines cause autism.
Look, the number one issue is going to be the economy. That's something that all the candidates are going to have to deal with. The economy is going to be the number one front and center thing. It's not going to be about the vaccines. It's not going to be about identity politics, because at the end of the day, whether you got the vaccine or not, or whether you care about identity politics or whatever else that makes you feel good about yourself, we all can agree on one thing. Our wallets are hurting. All right, how can you eat and care about issues when, you have no money? If you have no money, you're going to want to fix that problem. Human beings are animals. We're going to do everything we can for our survival. And right now we are in a neoliberal system that's based on consumerism, where we have to spend money, have to earn money. And the fact that we are lacking in that says a lot, especially with our politicians doing so well for themselves. In fact, we're going to be talking about Nancy Pelosi a little bit later on in the show. The economy, number one issue. And all the candidates, be it Trump, yes, Biden, RFK Jr., Dr. Cornel West, Dr. Jill Stein, and all the other independent candidates better come up with a very solid, good plan to make our lives better, because Americans can't afford to wait anymore.
And his recent staunch criticism of the COVID shots.
Would you have tried to stop the FDA from approving?
All right, look at his 2024. 2020's gone. All right, no one could go back in time. Would you have stopped the vaccine? Well, it's over. Time travel is not relevant. Why? You're just talking about a what if. You could what if a scenario all day long. What if I went left instead of right? What if I went shopping today instead of tomorrow? What if I decided to put gas in my car or not? What if I decide to tie my shoes? What if I decide to put on a heavy jacket instead of a light jacket? Like, doesn't matter. What if?
In the COVID vaccine?
I would have said that they need to do science to show that the vaccine is actually going to avert more problems than it's causing.
So would you have sought to stop the FDA from approving a COVID vaccine?
This is not an important issue anymore. It doesn't matter. It's the economy. The economy. I don't want to sit through and listen about the vaccine because that's what we're going to be talking about. But I do want to pull this up here. Glenn Greenwald brought this up. Democrats and their media allies are freaking out because they need a conviction before the election. Because besides third parties, Democrats are not only afraid of the independent third party movement, but they're also afraid of Trump. And they want that conviction so bad.
Is now realizing that this just might be a regular election, and they're freaking out. What does that tell you?
It's kind of amazing that the parts of the corporate media that are desperate for Biden to win, which is pretty much every part of the corporate media other than the network that we're currently speaking on, is all but explicit that their real strategy is to ensure that Donald Trump is convicted before the election. That's why they're freaking out, because they know that's really one of their only chances. And if you look at polling data, including their own, the new poll that came out from NBC, what they're finding is that even voting groups that have long been loyal to the Democratic Party, like young voters and Latinos, Trump is now tied with Biden and is consolidating his lead with the Republican voters. And imagine what it says about the corporate media that they spent 7 years telling people Trump is a white nationalist, a fascist, a criminal, an insurrectionist, a dictator. And the American people are just tuning them out, and Trump's lead is increasing. It says so much about how the legitimacy of these media outlets has collapsed.
It does. And now the media is actively censoring Trump live. But at the same time, Joe Biden won't even do interviews with them. I mean, we're going to have an election where no one gets to see either candidate.
Yes. Isn't that great? And so I want to pause right here and just bring out my final thoughts about the third party and independent movement. We could potentially, if Trump and Biden still keep on this policy of really not engaging with the media, not doing a debate, there is a potential, and I know we all have our opinions about all the other candidates, how they've disappointed us or not, but many Americans who are not fully engaged in this political sphere will look at independence as another viable option. RFK Jr., Dr. West, Dr. Jill Stein, the Libertarians. They can very well look at that, and we could see a rise in support. Voter turnout is key. As I've said before, and numerous other channels have said before, 50% of the U.S. population identifies itself as independent, and there are many non-voters who would also possibly could get engaged and look at third parties and independents as a viable option. People want choices. We've been saying this for years, but now we have two candidates where it's a click, copy, paste of the previous election cycle. 2020 is a repeat. As I have predicted it was going to happen, it is now fully coming out for all of us. I remember saying this after the 2020 election cycle, that Trump was going to seek re-election, and it's going to be Biden versus Trump because the Democrats and Biden are too much of egomaniacs to step down. Biden was never going to follow through as being a one-term president. So now both parties are afraid of the overall support that third parties are getting. So Jesse Ventura, as much as I am not a fan of supporting RFK Jr., it is an additional boost for RFK Jr.'s campaign that will draw in more supporters. I'm not a fan of RFK Jr.'s policy and stance towards Israel. I think Dave Smith, in regards to his interview with RFK Jr., was very eye-opening and really challenged him critically. RFK Jr., if you like to be challenged like that, you should once again meet up with Max Blumenthal so you can have that full-on debate and conversation. Don't pull a Hotez. All right, got to get serious here. Third parties, independents, they're not the threat. They are not the danger to democracy. They're the needed resource. But the real truth is we have to look at the full-on abolishment of all political parties, and that's through citizen ballot initiatives. So long as there are political parties, and I'm going to quote Jesse Ventura on this one, instead of a two-party system, we might have a three-party, four-headed monster, five-headed monster that is controlled by money and politics. Because the party and party officials are always going to look out for the interests of the party. I know human beings, we're tribal. We pick our groups and sides. But in order to have a true direct democracy, a true republic, a true representation, the abolition of money in politics, the abolition of political parties must happen. We cannot have these institutions around. They have shown their failures. They've shown exactly why we cannot have the current system as is. And perhaps this election cycle will be the necessary stepping stone for further engagement for citizens in this country to start building movements and organizations not connected to Washington, D.C., and taking on the arduous task of turning every single state into a citizen ballot initiative state. The fight won't be easy, but it's going to be ongoing. It should be very interesting to see overall the continuous support of third parties and what they might get. Now, of course, there's going to be the fear of Trump, and third parties are going to be vilified. You can have your opinions about Dr. West or Dr. Stein or RFK Jr. or whoever else is running. But just like Trump has a right to be on the ballot, all these other candidates do too as well. And they do have a right to be on the debate stage in order to convince voters that they should earn their votes. Perhaps this election cycle will be the most interesting. Not the most important, but the most interesting. We'll see how this all turns out, especially in November.